What's up, guys? It's your boy Alex coming to you live from my kitchen. Wanted to talk through keto, given the popularity of the diet plan in the general internet sphere. I actually tried keto for a couple years ago, and there are many principles in my diet framework that draw on keto. But let's start with what I think of the diet as a whole. Number one, is it for you? I don't know if keto is for you. A lot of diets work specifically to individuals, and if they are working, you can kind of tell that they're working early on. One reason that keto will work according to people who don't follow keto or don't like keto is that anytime you're eliminating any type of food from your diet, they'll say maybe you're eating less. So if you maybe eat 50% of your calories from carbohydrates and you cut out carbohydrates, the people who preach caloric deficits will say, well, obviously they're losing weight because they cut out half of their calories, and the only thing that really matters is caloric consumption. And I think there's a degree of truth to that, but I'll offer a little bit more nuance that view doesn't have. I've personally found that carb consumption tends to augment my consumption of all the other macros, of fats and proteins. So if I'm trying to restrict my calorie consumption without actually counting calories, the easiest way for me to personally do that is to restrict my carb consumption. The less carbs that I eat, the less I crave protein, the less I crave steak, the less I crave fat. If I were trying to eat like a 32-ounce steak in one meal, I would actually eat bread with it and something sweet. And this is something that the calorie counters don't necessarily account for. They don't account for how certain foods might augment your desire to eat other foods. And at the end of the day, a lot of people who are practicing diets don't necessarily care why they work, they just care that they work. And so if consuming a ketogenic diet ultimately leads you to consume less other food, well, that's the same thing as counting calories in terms of the net impact, is you will consume less food. The other thing about eating keto is it forces you to be careful about the ingredients that you consume. A lot of food cooked in the United States as well as the Western world has added sugar. Most foods tend to taste better when they have added sugar, and it's a cheap way that restaurants and other food producers can, essentially get you hooked on their products. And so if you're not eating sugar, if you're only eating it very, very sparsely, what you're going to end up doing is limiting your consumption of a lot of commercially available foods, which are designed to addict you and to get you to overconsume them. And so if all you're doing is cutting out a lot of sugar from your diet, there's a good chance that you're going to cut out a lot of other eating that you would otherwise do. And so my experience with a lot of restrictive diets is if you just place rules around what you eat, you will tend to eat less things. And when you eat less things, you have, the results of eating less things, which is typically weight loss, especially if your activity is the same or is increasing in intensity or duration. And so, a lot of times people love keto because they say, oh, your body's burning ketones. You can, go straight into fat burning. I'm not going to delve into any of that science because that's not something that I've personally researched, and I'm not, the person who can speak about this topic without getting sued. What I can offer is my experience trying the diet, and I can also tell you why I follow some of the principles of it, but I don't follow it completely. Number one, I trained, as I mentioned, in a keto diet for about 1 or 2 weeks. And I found that the first week I could maintain my training output. It was hard. The sessions were definitely challenging. They were way more challenging than previous sessions, probably because my muscles lacked the glycogen that they get from eating carbohydrates. But I could still work out hard for week 1. So I thought, interesting. Okay, well, if I can just push through this, maybe I'm onto something here. Well, week 2 came and I just hit a wall. I really could not maintain my training output with no carbs in my system. And so I decided that wasn't worth it for me because I was already at low body fat, 5-6% at the time taken from calipers. So it wasn't worth it for me to eliminate something that was boosting my workout performance. And if you follow me long enough, you'll know that the most important thing that I consider when structuring my own diet, structuring my own training plan is this thing going to allow me to increase my output while I'm training? And that's why I think some carbs are okay, because some carbs do absolutely help me increase my output training. And that increased training output tends to result in greater lean muscle mass and a faster metabolism, as evidenced by the resting metabolic rate test that I took 1.5 years ago, where I'm burning about 500 or 600 calories more per day than most people my age with my lean muscle mass. As far as food restrictions or dietary restrictions, you guys know from following me, I eat a lot of things. A lot of people kind of forget or may miss the idea that there are foods that I do restrict. Carbs are one of them. I write in my book, 10 Easy Wins for Easier Fat Loss, that when I was at my leanest, I was consuming, 7 or few servings of carbs per day. And if you're counting that in grams, probably ended up being about 175 grams per day of carbs. But it's simple. I can just count it. A slice of bread counts as 1. A quarter box of pasta counts as 4. A cup of rice counts as 1.5. And I would just count it up. I wouldn't count the calories. I would just, count the big things and try to keep the big number, generally at around 7. What I would find is that if my carb consumption went too low, say for a few days, I was hanging at the 3 to 4 to 5 servings per day, continuing to train hard, eventually I would end up craving sugar, which is not something that I want. I've noticed that sugar consumption distorts my taste and my cravings for other food. It makes it much more challenging for me to eat intuitively and eat the right amount intuitively. And so I kind of realized that there is a little bit of a lower bound to how much I can restrict carbs and still have a positive benefit from it. Now, on the other side is, I've found that when I start eating more than 7 servings of carbs, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 or so, or even more per day, I will consume more other food and I will tend to increase my body fat. Now, that's something that I've willfully chosen to do these last 8 months or so, as I've shifted from more of an aesthetics-based program, which is still a performance-based program. It was just, the goal is to always be, having ripped abs, to more of a powerlifting program where I'm able to do working sets of deadlifts in the mid 400s range, max in the mid 500 range. For doing that optimally, I do need carbs. And so I've upped my carb consumption over the last year, as well as my general caloric consumption over the last year, to around 4,000 per day. And that'll range anywhere from maybe 3,000 to 5,000, depending how hungry I am. And I don't weigh my food and I don't count, incredibly precisely, but that's the general amount that I'm eating. And I'm okay being a little bit flexible. My body fat has gone up as my carb consumption and caloric consumption has gone up. This is not a surprise. It's exactly what I signed up for because I'm also getting stronger. And so some people view keto as the end-all be-all solution to their problems. And for those who've experienced it, great. I do know anecdotally that there are many diabetics who've had their symptoms reverse when adopting a keto diet. I do know that there's many people who've lost, tens and dozens of pounds adopting a ketogenic diet. Is it magic? No, I don't think any diet is magic. But there are tenets that make it understandable for why it works, particularly for people who respond to carbs similarly to drugs. I've noticed for myself, when I'm consuming carbs, when I'm consuming sugar, I will consume more other foods like I mentioned before. And so I don't think that this is uniform across the population. I think that some people will end up consuming many more other foods when they consume carbs, while other people can consume carbs and maybe not consume as much other food. So for the segment of the population that would say be predisposed to, quote unquote, carb addiction, a ketogenic diet might understandably work better for a segment like this because it helps them avoid the thing that they can't sensibly manage, sort of like an alcoholic does better when they just have zero alcohol. Right? Whereas most people within the population can have some alcohol because their bodies process it normally. Some people cannot have any alcohol. I think we're probably 5 or 10 years away from realizing that people's diets, as far as how they interact with their body, are not that dissimilar to these drug analogies. So if you like this video, please click like, subscribe. Love to have you on. I want to share all of the bro science tips and hacks that I've learned over the years. Want to make fitness easy, want to make it fun. Peace out.